Hey, Mike, it's Monday.
Hey, it's Monday. It's not Thursday and it's not Friday, which were the other two times we tried to pull this off but couldn't.
Man, we've been busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this weekend you said you were going to have a show.
Yeah. We played a live show on Saturday and I got a lot of exercise moving drums up and down from the basement studio, which is pretty far underground. It's not the playing drums that's a lot of exercise, it's huffing them around.
Mhm,
Hmm.
got it. And what was masking like at the show? I can't say I've been to a live event in a long time.
Yeah. Well, once in the door, most people's masks came off at the tables, which,
Uh-huh.
was okay, but it was standing room only. The place was packed. So I kept masked up while I wasn't playing. So I guess here's where that vaccination comes in, you know.
Yes, I guess that is. Hey, I know folks are joining us this morning partially because there's a big ransomware attack in the news this morning.
There is.
U.S. food supply under attack. What's going on this morning?
So the Black Matter gang has hit an Iowa grain cooperative. And while on the face of it, that might not sound like that's going to be a big disruption to food supply, the food and ag sector,
Hmm.
what they do is they send animal food to farms, ranches, stuff like that. And so it's pork, beef, chicken. Eventually, if this goes on long enough and they are really impacted for, say, a week or something like that, there's going to be a
Hmm.
big impact. So I think CISA's in there right now. They're negotiating. They brought it down from an original extortion amount of $4.9 million. Now they got it down just under $2 million. Going to be interesting to see what happens here because this is happening at the same time that, the Biden administration has put out this thing about the exchanges and how they will sanction exchanges if they handle ransomware money.
Hmm.
So this one's going to get kind of interesting real quick.
Yeah, I mean, and this is not, of course, the first attack on the food supply. There was the
Yeah.
meat packing attack.
JBS.
Yeah,
Yeah.
JBS, right.
Hmm.
Um, is this the new thing? Is this what, have the bad guys shifted sectors?
Maybe. And if you will remember, right around, I guess, the beginning of September, maybe last week of August or something like that, there were a number of warnings that came out from Homeland Security about vulnerabilities in the food and ag sector and how I guess they had picked up some, indicators that, yeah, they were going to be targeted. And so here we are.
And is this Russians? Is that what you said?
Black Matter is, the name of the gang. It's an Eastern Europe gang. The money goes to Eastern Europe, to crypto exchanges out there. So, it quacks like a duck.
Uh, yeah. Okay, comrade.
Hmm.
Um, all right. Hey, and also, speaking of sectors that that we can help, you were at an in-person conference last week.
I was. It was the Waswood Conference, the Washington Association of Sewer and Water Districts. And my job there was to provide security awareness training to all of the commissioners, the elected commissioners for these water districts in the state. Their water is one of these sectors where the sector specific agency, which in this case the EPA, has not done really anything to regulate the IT security and the OT security of these operations. The EPA is only regulated water purity. Well, all that's going to change, just like the Colonial Pipeline. When that happened, there had been all these warnings about pipelines. We'd seen them, get taken down in other countries and things like that. Well, the TSA was the sector-specific agency that was supposed to be, handling regulatory requirements for pipelines, got caught completely with their pants down, and now they've snapped back the other way, and there's all these regulations coming out for pipelines. This is going to happen for water too. The Coast Guard is starting to do it with maritime ports. So I think it was a good idea that I delivered, some of these messages early on to these characters. And I'll say, commissioners for public utilities, um, how do I say this? Some of them were born pre-computer, and it's you got to be really careful the language you use when you're talking to them, because it's you easily confuse people with all of our secret handshake terminology. So
Yeah,
that was a little challenging.
yeah, and I do try to help you with that. Um, hey, and while we're talking about making sure people are trained, security
Hmm.
October is coming, and with October comes
Halloween.
Halloween, but also Cybersecurity Awareness Month.
Oh
And
yeah,
so
that.
we're going to start doing free security awareness trainings every week, every Friday. We've also, for the first time, produced some short videos that are accessible by anybody. That will be accessible for anybody, not just the folks with IT speak. Security topics like how to secure your files in case your laptop gets stolen, resisting scammers and social engineering, and your home network. So, anyway, we'll be sending those out. If you're not on our list, email me, jake@criticalinsight.com. I'll make sure you're invited to the security awareness trainings and get the videos. Um, and sorry, I had to clear my throat, but I muted for that. Mike, to the news.
Yeah.
I saw your interview with Government Computing News.
Hmm.
That was a heck of an article, election security, and I'll put a link to the article in the chat.
Yeah, it's. I was surprised because it looked like I was the only one they interviewed, which is good because I had a lot to say on that particular topic. We hit a lot during the conversation, not the least of which is that the U.S. needs some kind of fallback plan for elections. There are natural disasters that are increasing in frequency and intensity. There is a pandemic that's not going away. And I think even more significantly, election workers and poll place volunteers are quitting because of all of the threats of violence they're getting for doing their jobs.
Yeah, that's
You
super
know,
great.
yeah, states that don't like the outcome of an election are squashing mail-in voting, and there's no plan B. We need a plan B. If a fire wipes out your election machinery, or if nobody feels secure enough to volunteer to help conduct that election, you got to have a plan B.
So, like, what's a reasonable plan B, Mike?
Well, so not to I don't know, throw a spoiler at everybody, but there are methods that are in use for what's called UOCAVA voting, which is uniformed overseas and disabled voters. Okay, so if you're blind, can't get to a polling place, this has been a method that's been in place for a long time, and it works pretty much like DocuSign works. Right, we use that all the time. I sign board documents all the time. And if that was an approved fallback plan, we'd have a way to spin up a voting method quickly. But there's a lot of resistance to this because what it looks like, it's document transmission. That's what it is. But the academic community says online voting, no, never. So, my job and part of a research project I'm working on is to do a risk assessment around this stuff rather than just a binary, yes, it'll work, no, it'll never work, which is kind of the computer science view of the world. So that's where we are.
Yeah, and I know you're going to end up pissing off a lot of academics who say no.
Mhm.
I,
That's the plan.
no, but pissing people off is kind of what you do, right?
Again, some days, Mondays, yeah.
Hey, so moving on, I sent you an article a couple of days ago about the Alaska breach.
Hmm.
That all of their health records were breached. No ransomware, and it happened in May. Why is it just coming out, and what happened?
Yeah, I know the one you're talking about. Yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting on a couple of levels. Like you say, it was records theft only, no extortion. So that tracks with the threats that the federal government has issued to ransomware gangs about disrupting critical infrastructure. Okay. So records theft from a hospital is a crime. Ransomware is terrorism. So they've gone the safe route just by stealing all their records. And they didn't announce, until quite a bit later, last week, because of the ongoing investigation. You're insulated from public reporting if law enforcement is involved.
That always gets me, that
Mm.
you don't have to tell people if anyway.
Call the
So
cops so you can keep your mouth shut. Yeah.
right. I mean, that seems weird, but okay.
Hmm.
But like, what would they do with the records? Put them up for sale? I mean, health records are worth what, 4 times as much as a regular or just a simple financial record.
Yep.
So it's a lot of information that can be used for fraud.
Well, this is the other part that I think is really more interesting. If the records do show up for sale, it's clearly criminals, right?
Right.
But if they don't, this feeds the theory that you know nation states, China in particular, is amassing information on every American. So we're just going to have to watch and see whether or not this stuff shows up for sale.
Hmm.
It's interesting that there's no report of the records being for sale despite this happening 4 months ago. So, where's your mind go there?
So it's worse that they're not for sale, I
I
guess.
actually think it is. Yeah.
Mm. And
The
and
question is, what are they going to do with all the data? We talked about the
right.
immense computing power you would need to really, AI your way through this stuff or whatever they're going to do it. Um, you know, what they're going to do with this is concerning.
Hey, and by the way, speaking of medical records, I saw this thing from Walgreens, right?
Oh, yeah.
They left COVID vaccination records in a place that was accessible.
Hmm.
They don't know if they were grabbed or not. Somebody pointed it out, but it anybody could get your name, your date of birth, your gender identity, your phone number, your address, and and probably whether you got the vaccine or not, I don't know. And in some cases, it was both. Was it both the vaccine and the test, or just the vaccine? I think it was just the vaccine,
I
because you
think
got that record for it, and not COVID tests. But still, like that's a lot of
right,
health
but
information.
yeah, well, I didn't get a shot from Walgreens, but this all sounds like a big time HIPAA violation that's going to end poorly for them. Um, whether it was just vaccination records, whether it was test records, and whether or not there was. I did read something about if you had your test results could be there as well. So I'm not sure that there was no testing. But as long as we're in the health sector here, how about that clinic that got cybered and can't recover their health records? The bad guy's crappy encryption software corrupted the records permanently. So, disruption of critical infrastructure that can result in loss of life, right? No record of that allergy to penicillin, for example. And this is a family medical practice in Arizona that's now, without any of their patient records, what do? You start calling people up and asking them questions, I guess.
Ugh. And I mean,
Yeah.
we got to go after these criminals. They didn't the Biden administration just announce something about ransomware operators?
Yeah, that's what I was talking a little bit about before, and I think this, this grain cooperative is going to re-energize this discussion. Right, the Biden
Hmm.
administration, from my read, is using the authority given to the Treasury Department to regulate financial transactions, the
Hmm.
Office of Foreign Asset Control, OFAC. Right, but what they're saying is that any cryptocurrency transactions that support ransomware will have those exchanges, the ones that accept those transactions, those exchanges will be sanctioned.
Well, I mean, so does that mean they're not saying it's illegal to make an extortion payment using cryptocurrency? I mean, if an exchange is involved, what's the government going to do? Can't they be clear?
Well, they'll our habit, our thing that we do is, and what they will definitely do is go after the individuals that run the exchanges, especially those that trade coins with other exchanges in order to hide, to obfuscate, where the money's coming from, where the money's going to.
Hmm.
Essentially, that's laundering it. So if you're on that list, don't get on a plane because you might be coming to America involuntarily. The other thing, and this is a bit of a stretch, they could use that OFAC analogy to prohibit using certain exchanges altogether, even if it's not for criminal activity. Okay. So if they sanction them in that way, that's basically taking out the business of the exchange and making the operator really nervous about being arrested, which seems like a way that this can be done within the confines of existing authorities.
And do you think it'll work?
I think it'll move the needle a bit. I also think it'll cause the creation of proudly illegal exchanges. You know,
Great.
yeah, I'm doing this illegally. What are you going to do? I'm in a country without an extradition treaty, and and by the way, this again, this black matter ransomware gang that's hit this thing, they are going to feel, I think, an effect from this. The Biden administration just announced this recently that they wanted to do this with the exchanges, and it's not clear that there needs to be a whole lot of work done in order to, make sure this gets through legal review and all of that stuff, because the Treasury Department does have this existing authority. So, I think again, this event is going to get that conversation just going again, re-energized, and maybe drive home the importance of, how the Biden administration is using market forces to get the badness to stop.
All right. Time's almost up here. What threats and vulns do people need to pay attention to?
Okay. So last week there was a smaller than usual Microsoft patch bundle, but it's an important one. It looks like the print spooler issue has been addressed, and also the Outlook problem with parsing Cyrillic characters and completely being fooled by it. Apple also dropped an update for that NSO vulnerability that takes over a phone by sending it a text message. Get those done for sure. There's another one that's important. It's a critical bug number 3 is affecting Netgear smart switches. And a proof concept has been released. And 2 of the CVSS scores for the 3 bugs are 9.8 and 1 is 7.8. So very bad if you don't get in front of this one. Patches are out. Do not delay. Lastly, and this is recent news from, I guess, Friday, Azure has a very bad vulnerability that's being exploited right now. And this is what it says: with a single packet, an attacker can become root on a remote machine by simply removing the authentication header. So what's going on is now Mirai-style botnet and crypto miners are being dropped into Azure all over the place right now.
That's great. Makes me also want to make fun of the way you say Azure.
I'm trying. It's our evil, Revel, Azure. It's all part of the same.
Nobody
goofed
pay
up
attention. Nobody
lexicon.
pay attention to Mike for pronunciation guide. But I do want to add that there is some good news. You talked about speaking of our evil.
There is no good news.
Well, Bitdefender just released a universal decryption key for our evil ransomware. It's a Romanian company that isn't saying how they came by it, but apparently working with law enforcement. So that's good news, right? Speaking of good news, do you have any other good news or anything to make us laugh at the very end?
Well, I hope this makes somebody laugh. I chuckled when I read it. So the company called Laserfish, we see them at conferences all the time, right? They do a lot of work in the public sector. Well, it seems like, a lot of government and military sites use Laserfish to manage content on the sites. And it has been vulnerable. And the vulnerability has been used by spammers to post ads on government and military sites.
Oh, great.
So they're in cleanup mode right now, but apparently the government and military sites are all rife with ads for Viagra and porn. So, Semper Cyber.
The military does not condone porn or Viagra, right?
No, and I don't think they chuckle at my jokes either. So knew that was going to be a stretch.
That was. Yeah, I don't know if that did it. We'll have to come back next week with something better. Hey, somebody asked in the comments here, thoughts on US, UK, and Australia security pact?
Well, France is pissed. And I think rightly so. They just didn't like being, cut out of the decision-making process, and they got blindsided by this. I think ultimately this is going to cause a reaction from China. I think that's, predictable. What will that reaction be?
Right.
Will that be any different from what we've been having to live with already? I don't know. I don't think so. But, again, all this information that they have been amassing on American citizens at some point is going to get put to use, and it won't be put to good use. So, the more we are working in our strategic interests, right? We need to have security in that part of the world. And just anything that we do is going to irritate China, and we're going to have to work our way through this. And unfortunately, I think the reaction may be manifest internally in the country rather than externally, in a military conflict somewhere.
Good. Well, many things to look forward to. Thank you for that. Anyway, all right, everybody. We'll see. I think we might actually see you later this week. Mike and I might do one on Thursday. Don't tell him though; he'll get all grumbly.
No,
All
let's do it on Thursday.
Oh, good. All right, cool.
All kinds of things are going to happen between now and Thursday.
All kind of things. All right, everybody. Remember, if you want to invite security awareness training or any of the other things we talked about, just email me, Jake@criticalinsight.com, and I'll get them over to you. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Okay.